It's time for another edition of the Improbability Engine. I'm Will Aubrey. My buddy Joe Darnell is here, and as always, we start with our moment of what?
Yeah, I got one that's a pretty good one. Of course, we know the NCAA brackets came out this past week, and so a lot of talk has been going on about seeding and stuff like that. There's one that really caught my eye, though. And let me just kind of read off some numbers. All right. Vanderbilt, 19-15 record out of the SEC. Beat Florida in the SEC tournament, which I think is the one that put them over the top and put them in the tournament.
Okay.
They're a 9 seed. A 9 seed. Middle Tennessee State, 30-4 record. Won their conference tournament in Conference USA. Had an outstanding year. Really good team. Of course, Murray State played them and lost. A very good team this year. They're a 12 seed. The problem and the thing that made me go, what? They beat Vandy at Vandy 71-48.
Oh my goodness.
And it wasn't that close. I mean, they had run out to like a 35-point lead at one point. It was ridiculous. I mean, they had beat a mud puddle in Vandy's behind and were stomping it dry at Memorial.
Wow.
And then, they only won by 20-something. But they got a 12 seed, whereas Vanderbilt got a 9 seed.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. And I don't think that's the worst loss that Vandy had. This is a team in Vanderbilt that lost to Bucknell.
Right.
And lost by 20 to Missouri. The worst Missouri basketball team in at least a generation, probably ever.
Probably ever.
Because they were bad.
Okay. I know you can look at Vandy's record and find impressive victories.
Yes.
Okay?
A couple. And really close losses.
But
they lost to Kentucky close. Congratulations.
But to me, it ought to come down to head-to-head.
I mean,
I don't care about that other stuff. The other stuff is what you use when they don't play head-to-head. If they play head-to-head,
it's kind of right there in front of you.
Yeah, you go with the winner.
And the thing is, this Middle Tennessee team, they're really talented. They're a really good team. They did lose to Tennessee State, but that was when Tennessee State was actually good and beating people. I mean, the beginning of the year, Tennessee State looked really, really scary. And they went and beat Middle Tennessee, which was a big, big win. But I still don't get it. I don't understand how you can logically seed Vanderbilt a 9 and then seed Middle Tennessee State, a team that beat them at their home court by 20, how you can seed them 3 spots lower. It's not like, okay, well, we moved them because they play that seed line game.
Right.
So, well, you're a 9 here, but we'll give you a better location and move you to a 10.
Right.
Or an 11 even.
Right.
Sometimes you'll bounce that far. That's not what happened. This is one of those that are like, well, they're clearly a 12. Well, they're 30-4 and beat the 9 seed. Yeah, that doesn't matter. It's mind-boggling how they could look at that and justify it. And there was actually a Pete Themmel from SI wrote an article saying that the NCAA has a logo bias. They look at teams from big conferences and they are biased towards the big conferences.
Oh, I think
teams.
that's definitely true.
And I don't see the reason behind it because it's not like Vanderbilt's going to bring a whole lot of people to wherever they play.
Good point.
Because they're a mediocre team.
Yeah.
If they were great, it'd be a different story. They travel.
Middle Tennessee is probably going to bring more people.
Absolutely, because it's a great year. And this is the argument that I have with the idea of, well, it's about ticket sales.
Maybe it's about TV viewers.
True. Here's the thing I think about with ticket sales. The last time Murray State was in the NCAA tournament, they went to Louisville. They got put in a pod with Kentucky and Iowa State and then Colorado State for Murray State, right? At the same time, Nashville had spots. They had a pod down in Nashville. Cincinnati was there, a couple of teams. I saw the arena in Louisville full. Now, it wasn't 100% capacity, but it was a good crowd.
It was hard to get tickets.
Hard to get tickets. Now, some of that was because Kentucky was there,
Right.
but some of that was because Murray State was there.
Yes.
If you put Murray State in Nashville, how many tickets do they sell?
Actually, come to think of it, I think it was technically a sellout because I had to buy a ticket for my wife, and I had to get it on the secondary market.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. No, the reason why I bring that up is because the games played in Nashville, Cincinnati, which is a bigger school, a nice reputation, a coach with Murray State ties, and the teams that were playing there, seats were empty. It was empty. So if they wanted to sell tickets, all you got to do is put Kentucky in one pod, and then you take a team like Murray State, I think Middle Tennessee State in this particular year,
Right.
You put them in a different spot where their fans are going to go, you'll sell tickets like hotcakes.
I agree. Now, my moment of what?
Go for it.
It won't take nearly as long as yours.
That's normal.
In case anyone was wondering, just in case people were sitting there going, I wonder. I really like Sarah Spain. And that's it. We can move on.
All right. Well, we've talked about this off air, and we're going to have a conversation about it now, I guess, since the Sarah Spain moment was what? People are at home are going, what? What does that have to do with anything? Okay, so we've talked about this, and we've come to the end of the season, and we're kind of in a lull. We could talk about racer baseball or Breads baseball, depending on what generation you are, and they're doing well. Winning some games against nationally ranked teams and having some success. Softball, fastest to 20 wins in their program's history.
They're doing 20-4. That's incredible.
That's really good. I mean, it's really, really good. And probably could be 22-4 or something of that nature if, weather had
Right.
had helped out a little bit. But we had talked about this. We wanted to talk about the greatest players to ever play at Murray State. And we knew that we couldn't do that in one show.
Right.
I mean, anybody who follows Murray State knows you can't do that in one show.
Right.
So we decided to break it down into positions. And today we're doing guards.
Right.
So the greatest racer guards of all time. I'm interested to see what list you brought. So let's do it.
Okay. I did some research, looked at some numbers, and
disregarded them and went with your gut.
well, if I do that, no, I don't like what the numbers tell me. But what the numbers suggest is that Cameron Payne's the best guard to ever play at Murray State.
He's on my list.
If you look at it, he has a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. I didn't find anybody else with a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio that started all the time.
Chad Townsend.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I didn't look at Chad. But anyway, in addition to that, they have this nifty plus-minus rating. Offensive plus-minus, defensive plus-minus,
Right.
and then box plus-minus, which combines the two.
Yeah.
Well, I looked at guards that have played since they had that rating. Cameron Payne was the only one that for his career at Murray State had a positive defensive plus-minus rating.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
So if you combine his ability to shoot threes with his ability to penetrate,
Yep.
with his ability to pass the ball,
Yeah.
he's not my favorite guard that's played at Murray State, but numerically, it's hard to pick someone better.
Yeah, well, and that's what I found in a lot of what I think everybody knows what you have with Cameron Payne, and people are going to.
And he only played 2 years here. Imagine what he could have been if he had played 4.
Well, if he had played 4, this past year would have been his senior year.
Yeah.
So kind of let that one wash over you a little bit. Could you imagine him and Jonathan Starks together on the floor at the same time? Ugh. I mean, it's just one of those you go, oh my God,
Right.
how does that happen?
Right.
I looked at those newer guys. Of course, you've got to put Cameron Payne on the list. I think anybody with a pulse and a brain knows he's one of the best players that have ever come out of Murray State. He's incredibly talented. And the thing that you talk about is defensive plus minus. People forget, I think, how many block shots he had.
Right.
I mean, steals are one thing. We know how many steals he had and how many times he picked guys off and stuff like that. And he did very well at that.
But he had long arms, which allowed him to block
he
shots.
He blocked a lot of shots. I mean, to the point where you're looking at it going, wait a minute. You got a team with Jarvis Williams and Jonathan Farrell, and the second best shot blocker is Cameron Payne. Yep. There were games where he had 3 and 4 blocks. I mean, and you don't think about that from a guard. I think you also have to put in Isaiah Cannon. I know how prolific a scorer he was. His scoring is one of those that you look at it and you go, yeah, he's a great scorer, but he was an even better clutch scorer. He was a guy who hit a lot of really big shots.
And I think he was at his best as a junior.
Well, the team around him was better as a junior.
The team around him was better.
Yeah.
He bought into the notion that he needed to bulk up for his senior year.
Right.
And he added strength,
right.
Bulked up, added weight, but he wasn't as fast as he was
right.
as a junior.
Right.
I think he was at his best as a junior.
I think that's probably right. So you look at those two guys, and while acknowledging the possibility of a recency bias, we'll say that those guys deserve on the list of greatest guards of all time. Working backwards, Chad Townsend and Terry Mays. Now,
Chad's one of my all-time favorites. But the numbers...
Well, the numbers are what they are. He averaged double-digit points and is the all-time leader in assists.
Right.
Over 2 years.
Right.
At one time, he had a 3-1. The year they were in the top 25 and were an 8 seed or a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament, he had a 3-1
and
assist to turnover ratio.
And I'll always remember being in Racer Arena, and he gets the ball at the other team's foul line and throws an alley-oop to the other basket, where Rod Murray jumps up and grabs it and flushes it home.
And the thing with Chad Townsend to remember, Terry Mays, one of the greatest shooters of all time at Murray State. The man could score. He could flat shoot. I've seen the tail end of the OVC championship game against Austin Peay where Terry Mays and Bubba Wells go at it. I believe it was Bubba Wells. I think it was Bubba Wells' senior year. And you just watch Terry Mays rise up and take jumpers that you look at it and go, no, and just splash over and over and over again. Fantastic player, had a long career in Europe. So those guys go on my list. I'm not going to put these in order of where, how they compare to each other, because I think it's really difficult to do once you get older. But these are guys who were the best at their position for their times. Aubrey Reese, another guy that you look at and you go, the guy could score. He was an undersized lead guard. He was a little bit ahead of his time. Now that Isaiah Thomas for the Boston Celtics is really good, but he's an undersized lead guard who can score and slash and shoot and does all this stuff.
And the thing with Aubrey that makes what he accomplished so much more amazing is you never looked at him and said, he's the quickest guy on the floor, or he can jump out of the gym, or anything like that. And, of course, we'll all always remember the game in the OVC tournament against SEMO, Neil Bradley's, he did it again. And I'll always remember that when they were in the huddle calling the play, Coach Anderson was calling the play for someone else, and Aubrey said, give it to me, I'll get it for you.
Jimmy Chitwood
from Hoosiers.
That's
all
exactly
over again.
It. Yeah, and this is a guy, he was 2 times All OVC, averaged 20 points a game his senior year, which there are very few players who have done that at Murray State. That is a big jump. Once you get there, it's like the 400 mark in baseball. If you hit 400, you've done something. So that's pretty good there. And, of course, the 2 buzzer beaters, one in the regular season against SEMO, and then the one in the OVC tournament over 6'11" Bud Ely. If he'd have told me beforehand that's what he was going to do, I'd have told him, don't do that.
Right.
But he challenged the 6'11" guy, got the ball around, contorted himself in such a way to flip the ball up into the air, and the ball goes through OVC championship. It's fantastic. Some other names that have come through, Don Mann.
Great player.
Great player, 3 times All-OVC, career leader in assists over a 4-year career, and of course helped with the win over Kansas in '88, or not over Kansas, over NC State, and then a loss to Kansas in the NCAA tournament with Martin. Mann was one of those guys. You know, it's funny to think about it. The M&M boys in the '80s were, you know, we talk about Ron Green and bringing back the cachet of Murray State basketball whenever he was hired from Mississippi State and brought the program back that way. I think the comeback was solidified with the M&M boys. With their win in the NCAA tournament, they had a major impact on Murray State basketball that is still felt to this day. And so, along with his ability to play, which is at a very high level, you also add in what he did for the program, and he goes on my list. Lamont Sleets, another great basketball player, averaged 17 points a game over his career, which is good for 8 all-time. Had
the all-time scoring record as a freshman in total points until Cameron Payne broke it.
Yeah, and a fantastic basketball. 4-time All-OVC selection, which doesn't happen. I mean, it really just doesn't. You know, and I don't think it probably will ever happen much more again, because we're to the point now where if you're that good at that young, there's going to be pressure for you to move on, a la Cameron Payne. Here's a name that I want to put into this mix because it's probably not a name that a lot of people automatically jump to. Hector Blondet.
Okay.
Only all-conference 1 year in '69. But while he was a fantastic basketball player at Murray State, he had his ups and downs during the years, but, you know, really a solid basketball player. It's what he did on the international stage that, to me, is really telling. Originally from New York, parents were Puerto Rican. He played for the Puerto Rican national team. Now, what he did for the Puerto Rican national team was he got him a silver in the Pan Am Games, which is really good. I mean, considering the Pan Am Games are going to be the U.S. and everybody else in the late 60s and early 70s. But what I didn't know before doing the research, he led Puerto Rico to a 6th place finish in the 1972 Olympics and was considered one of the best players in the Olympics that year. Now, 72, you remember the disputed gold medal game between the Soviet Union and the United States.
Which someday we should talk about that.
We should. That's a good one. But kind of overshadowed by that was Hector Blondet's Puerto Rico team finishing 6th in the Olympics is pretty incredible. And some of you might say, well, he was more of a forward. I put him in with the guards in this one because I wanted to make sure to talk about him. He's also a member of the Puerto Rican Basketball Hall of Fame. And really, I think started the draw of Caribbean players coming to the United States and going on and playing in international basketball. And there have been a lot of guys that do that I want to make sure that we're acknowledging what they do and how they've influenced it. And then my last two, I think should go without saying. Their numbers are in the rafters. Howie Crittenden and Benny Purcell.
Well, Benny, I think, has to go on the list. He played for the Washington Generals after his time at Murray State.
All-American.
You know, he was an All-American. That shows how good he was.
Player.
Howie, I have no idea.
He averaged 21-plus points per game a year for 3 years of varsity.
Really?
In the 1950s. That's without a shot clock and without a three-point line. Now,
okay.
The problem with that was they didn't win the OVC championship while he was there.
Okay.
Now,
somebody who's not on your list.
Yeah.
Marcus Brown.
Marcus Brown.
Do you think he doesn't deserve to be on the list?
No, Marcus
Brown. Or do you
Brown,
think he's more of a forward?
I always put him as a 3, a small forward. I know that seems completely incongruous with what's going on because he's not that big. But what he was able to do in the post, now, not mind you, not posting up,
right?
But his slashing game, he fits more of.
Now, who were the other players on those teams that he was on?
Vincent Rainey were on the team.
I would call Vincent a forward.
Vincent, I don't know what the hell to call him.
He's kind of an Adrian Dantley kind of guy.
You look at him and you
go, he doesn't have the size to be a 4, but that's kind of what he did.
Well, and coming out of Memphis.
Who is the point guard?
I don't know. Let me look it up and see.
You're supposed to be the guru.
I'm not a guru. I've never pretended to be a guru. No, you look at what Marcus Brown did. He was the straw that stirred the drink, and I think that kind of goes without saying. He was that guy, but it's not. They had William Moore, Fred Walker, Kenneth Taylor, Quentin Eccles, Vincent Rainey, Dwayne Davis, Matt Harris, Steve Barry, Jared Martin, Renardo Levine.
I'm just trying to figure out who the other guards would have been. I don't know. He was obviously a great player, and if you include him, if you call him a guard, then he belongs
list. Yeah,
on this
it's absolutely the truth. Yeah, I agree.
But the guy that I'm going to mention that's not on your list, and I don't think many people will think of in this regard, is Justin Verdon. Now, Justin, as a junior, averaged 15 points a game. He averaged 20 points a game as a senior. That's impressive. But when you consider that he only started about half of those games as a junior and senior, it becomes even more impressive. The coaching staff at that time just never bought into Justin's game. And as a result, he wound up coming off the bench in a lot of those games.
20 points a game.
Yeah. He only started 21 games as a senior, and he still averaged 20 points a game.
Well, he's 27th on the career scoring list. He scored 1,200 points in his career, which is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. That's a good career.
1,200 points, and he probably started fewer than 40 games in his career. 31 games in his career.
31 games he started.
So that's pretty dadgum good.
I agree. I think that's pretty impressive.
He was about a 40% shooter from three-point range. He was incredibly fast. And as for moments, I'll always remember the moment when he hit the floater in Louisville against Tennessee Tech in the OVC tournament to win that game. And then when the game's over, he runs over and jumps up on the press table and does the Superman pose.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And there's a lot of guys who are probably not on the list for the greatest of all time. They're that next tier down of guards that you look at and you go, these guys, I don't know where we'd be without them. And you put in guys like Isaac Miles, B.J. Jenkins, guys like that, where you look at them and you go, I don't know where we'd be without those two guys on that team.
Justin, in a way, was Jonathan Stark 15 years ago because he had Jonathan's shot selection.
And the Will Aubrey shot selection? I can hit it.
And the ability to hit it. I mean, but and I remember I was at a game at UT Martin and sitting right by the Murray State bench, and Andy Hornig is wide open under the basket. Justin's got the ball at the three-point line. You know what Justin did.
He shot it.
He shot it.
Well, in his defense, if he's hot and Andy Hornig is under the basket all alone, that's about the same percentage shot. I'm just going to say that's about the same. No, you look at that. William Moore was
and Jonathan Stark probably belongs on the list. I know he's only played here 1 year, but what he did in that year was incredible.
And that's the only reason why I don't have him on the list is I'm really afraid to put him on there. He's going to be a 2-year player. I want to see what his second year looks like. His first year, I think if you were just going to compare a player 1 year, their first year at Murray State, and compare those guys, you get a guy like Cameron Payne who was good, but you get a Gary Hooker who was great, and you get a Jonathan Stark who was amazing.
Now,
I mean, these are different types of players, but in 1 year, their first year at Murray State, what they did, wow. I mean, that's incredible.
The only negative about Jonathan, and I don't know that it's his fault,
right,
is that his teammates had a tendency to stand around and watch him play instead of move
Yep.
and get open.
Yep.
As a result, there were times when Jonathan just monopolized the ball.
Right.
But he wasn't doing it, I don't think, to be selfish. It was because nobody was moving.
Right.
They were just standing there waiting for him to do something.
No, you're absolutely right. And what that tells me is that it's really difficult to be on the floor with a guy who's that good and not have an eye on him at all times. And we saw that. I mean, you saw watching him play, you just kind of go, my God. You know, his 2 games in the OVC tournament are 2 of the greatest games ever played by a racer. And it happened on back-to-back nights in the postseason. When does that happen? I mean, you can compare that. I know Marcus Brown. Marcus Brown, if you put him with the forwards, is one of the top 3 forwards we've ever had in Murray State.
Absolutely.
If you put him with a guard, he's probably one of the top 3 guards of all times. He's going to be one of those guys you go, look, I don't know where to put him, but wherever you put him, he's probably the best at it.
Right.
He'd be one of the top 10 centers
Right.
in our talk here. But when you look at that, you look at what he did and how he did it. He had back-to-back big-time scoring games. I think it was against Washington University and then another game. Those were great during his career. He had back-to-back games where he scored the most points in back-to-back games in Racer history. Fantastic. One of those was against a non-Division I school. And that's not going to take anything away from it, but if you're comparing, I think that has to go in the comparison.
Agreed.
You look at what Jonathan Stark did in the OVC tournament this year. I've never seen a player take over a game so completely in a Racer uniform. I mean, there have been some really great players, but Marcus Brown had Vincent Rainey, who was a fantastic basketball player. Chad Townsend and Terry Mays were fantastic. Aubrey Reese, for most of his career, had pretty good talent around him. Even Don Mann, you look at Don Mann, you got Jeff Martin. Jeff Martin's the all-time leading college basketball scorer in the state of Kentucky. That guy was amazing. That doesn't take away from Don Mann, but it does show that, hey, look, the defense isn't going to focus on you. You know what I mean? And so when you look at what Stark did, you just kind of shrug. You know, you give the Michael Jordan shrug. I don't know. I don't know. It's just going in. He's shooting and it's going in. It's NBA Jam and he's on fire. I don't know what to tell you.
You know, and it's awful that I can't remember her name, but there was a girl from Connecticut that hit 10 out of 10 threes last week that did her own version of the Michael Jordan shrug, and I loved it.
It's one of those where, you know, what can I say? It's just
moving on to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
You know, there are ways that you can quibble with the seedings and one thing and another. I actually think the committee did a pretty decent job this year. There are people who whine, but I'm not going to whine about it.
You be really careful with saying whine, okay? I think there are some really significant gripes to be had out there.
Well, I agree with what you said about Middle Tennessee.
Okay, well, let me point something out about this, all right? So I'm going to name some Power 5 teams. Let me give you some stats real quick. All right, so Providence, USC, Kansas State, Vanderbilt, Iowa State, Virginia, Minnesota, and Virginia Tech.
Okay.
All Power 5, Power 6 teams, right? They're all at-larges. Their average record was 21-11. Total for those teams, they played 12 out-of-conference road games. 12 for all of those teams combined. 12 games. That means that for every team, they played 1.5 out-of-conference road games.
Okay.
Their average seed is an 8.
Okay.
All right. Middle Tennessee and UNC Wilmington. 2 mid-majors in the tournament. Cinderella's, darlings, if you want to. Combined played 9 out-of-conference road games. 9 of them. 2 teams. Their average record, 29.5 and 4.5. Right? So they average, one of them's 29, one of them's 30.
Right.
One of them's 4, one of them's 5. Their average seed, 12.
Okay.
What this tells me and what I believe we're preaching to the choir on this one. And I know you kind of agree with this too. Scheduling is egregious.
It is egregious.
Especially when they use the scheduling club to beat mid-majors down and out of the tournament and push mediocre Power 5, Power 6 teams into the tournament.
Here's the thing that I don't get.
Now, Iowa State did not get it. They didn't receive an at-large. I want to make sure that I state that. They won the conference tournament.
Why don't the mid-majors change things? There are more teams outside the Power 5 or Power 6, if you include the Big East, than there are inside them. They've got the votes. They could, at the next NCAA convention, change things.
If it was a true democracy, yeah. The problem is, it's not a democracy. You've got a system set up where all the money is held in one small group's hands. The leaders of these small schools don't see themselves as victims of the system. They see themselves as people who are looking to move up.
All right.
They want to move up into those positions, not be that coaches, be that athletic directors, administrators, what have you, presidents, conference presidents. It doesn't matter. All those people want to move up into those bigger jobs, and so they don't want to rock the boat.
What do you think of the tournament? Who are you picking to win it?
God, I don't know. You look at the top teams, and there are some really good teams, but every single one of them has glaring flaws. And
that's completely true.
They are glaring, not like, okay, well, they have a weakness. No, they've got flaws. Kansas, I can't figure that team out. They look like basket cases to me, because one game they'll come out and play like gangbusters, and the next game lay a complete egg. Louisville, same thing. They're well coached.
Louisville can do that in the same game.
In a 10-minute stretch, they can do that. Kentucky, they look like they just don't care at times.
And they played in one of the weakest leagues.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, as far as Power 5 leagues go, it's just weak as dishwater, and they consistently played down to the level of their competition.
Absolutely, yeah. And while they did have a good SEC tournament, I mean, they drubbed Arkansas in the championship. They almost lost to Alabama, which is at best a middling team anywhere. I mean, they're not a very good team. They've got talent, but they're not a very good team, and they almost lost that game. I mean, that shouldn't happen. If you're one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the country, that shouldn't happen. Duke and North Carolina, I can't figure them out. North Carolina looks like the better team, except when they're playing Duke, and Duke beats them. Duke can't get out of their own damn way. They trip other players, and then they can't win games. You look at UCLA. UCLA has as much offensive firepower as any team in the country, but they don't play any defense at all. It's like watching Loyola Marymount without the system. It's like, oh yeah, you guys can score 120, but you're going to give up 118 every night. It's just a tough situation to be in. No, I think the NCAA tournament is it's going to be good. It's anybody's to have. If I was to pick a team, I don't know.
Well, I'm pulling for Louisville, Villanova, and UCLA.
I think UCLA, Michigan, and probably North Carolina. Those would be my 3 versus the field.
Kudos to Rochelle Turner and the Murray High Lady Tigers as they got all the way to the semifinals of the state tournament.
Fantastic.
They beat Louisville Butler, the top-ranked team in the state.
And did it handily.
So,
which is amazing. Lost the eventual state champion. Nothing to hang your head about. A fantastic season. Great job by those ladies, and great job to Coach Turner as well.
And that brings to a close this edition of the Improbability Engine.
No, the NCAA tournament pissed